It's Monday, March 23rd, 2026. So the TSA has been unpaid for over a month now, since February 14th. Meanwhile, ICE has not been unpaid. Their funding came from the Big Beautiful Bill, and they've still got a massive amount of money to keep that force mobilized for a long time. They've presumably spread back out across the US. We're still seeing confirmed activity here in Minneapolis, but we're also seeing recent reported activity in places where it's more expected, such as LA, Florida, Chicago, and across the East Coast. NPR published an article today that included summarized infographics showing what normal looked like for ICE detainments in 2024 and 2025 between late January and mid-October of each year. The sizes of the boxes in this map that is part of that article shows a relative proportion of detainments across the continental US. ICE, which for all intents and purposes is still a massively overfunded and massively undertrained paramilitary organization that works at the insane whims of the rapist pedophile we have leading the White House. And this week they have been deployed to airports across the country. As I understand it, however, they're not there to help with the TSA airport security, but rather to be an intimidation force and to continue their mission of mass detainments and deportations with their body armor and long guns. I'm flying down to Florida later this week for Grandma, and while I'm not particularly excited to see those thugs in the process, I think there are some upsides to their presence for the purposes of continuing to sway public opinion even more against them. So I used to fly multiple times a month back in the 2010s out to client sites and hospitals across the US. As such, I'm pretty familiar with what I see as the two primary demographics: vacationers and business travelers. Vacationers are going to either be retired or simply high income enough to afford time off and leisure air travel and other travel costs. They're often older, which is a demographic that also tends to turn out to vote in a disproportionately high number. They are less likely to seek out new news sources in this dangerously propagandized environment, and as such are also more likely to rely on traditional news networks that are increasingly owned and weaponized by the likes of Rupert Murdoch or Larry and David Ellison. Business travelers are also generally high income. In the 2010s, being in a high travel role in corporate America meant a 20 to 30% higher salary than comparable non-travel roles. And that's in addition to things like frequent flyer miles or hotel points, so that people who are in airports a lot can be in them even more to complement their business travel with leisure. So I'm going to go ahead and label that group an insulated class. Not necessarily because they lack media comprehension to the same degree as I expect from the vacationers, but rather because we, as a former member there, have been taught since childhood that our job title and salary are a statement of who we are, to the point where people will overwhelmingly stick their heads in the sand as long as they can continue to make that money to pay for an increasingly expensive United States existence. These two groups are the ones that I want to see the heinous behavior of ICE firsthand more than any other. ICE is already very unpopular, and already this morning, on Monday, I've seen video from last night from the San Francisco airport of ICE tackling and detaining a crying mother and child after they already had their IDs checked through airport security. If the start of 2026 taught me anything, it's that nothing is going to activate the fight or flight response to this sort of domestic terrorism like proximity will. And this air travel interference is likely to be more in the faces of those who need to see and feel that proximity than anything the admin's done so far. There was a brief moment earlier when funding first lapsed for DHS where PreCheck was going to be suspended along with DHS funding, and I think that would have certainly had the same effect. But my money is that this ICE deployment to airports is going to backfire just as loudly, and here's hoping that Trump has just as much trouble chickening out of this one as he is chickening out of the hornet's nest he kicked in Iran.